Hello and welcome to our webinar, Displaying Salesforce Data on Your Website with the Soapbox Engage Directories app. Over the next little bit, we're going to be sharing some of the essential features and functionalities of our Directories app. With the Directories app, you're able to easily create online search forms, allowing your users to successfully query and display Salesforce data right on your website. Today, we'll be walking through the details of what that looks like, as well as how you can create a directory form through the Directories app. My name is Brad Grahowski. I'm the Director of Support Services here at PicNet. We're the company behind the Soapbox Engage suite of online apps. Soapbox Engage, to sum it up in a nutshell, is a platform that allows you to raise more money and change the world. Now we do that through a number of different apps that include our Donations app that allows you to fundraise online and includes a peer-to-peer fundraising add-on. We've got our Events app so that you can get event registrations for the activities that you're putting on. A Classes app, which is really a more robust version of the Events app if you have a full course catalog that you are looking to get registrations for. We have our Forms app, which allows you to easily collect data from online users and push that data to Salesforce. And we have our Directories tool, which we'll be talking about today. This does the exact opposite of the Forms app, allowing you to create queries easily without any code that pulls data from Salesforce and displays it on the front end of your site. We've got an e-commerce app called Shop that allows you to sell widgets and wares, subscriptions, memberships, and more, all online. We've got our Petitions app that will allow you to collect signatures online in support of your cause or advocacy. And the Actions app, which is our other advocacy app that allows your site visitors to send messages directly to decision makers. We've got our Website Portals feature that allows you to grant user login access to visitors that gives them a personalized experience of your Soapbox Engage instance and opens up some superpowers of all these other apps in interaction with those logged in users. We've got our Soapbox Mailer Salesforce native app that allows you to send mass emails from directly within Salesforce. And then finally, we do offer a full content management system as part of Soapbox, so if you ever want to have your full website hosted on Soapbox, you could elect to have that as well. Now let's get to the task at hand and take a look at our Directories app. Let's start things out by taking a look at a directory form on the front end of a Soapbox Engage site to give you an idea of what it's going to look like. Now I'm going to show you two examples to start out with, and the first one I want to show you is this. And you see here we have a search form at the top. Now this particular directories form is associated with a single object in Salesforce, and the fields we can add to the search form are going to be fields drawn from that Salesforce object. So here we see three search fields available: first name, last name, title, and these are fields that have been added to the Soapbox directory form from the object in Salesforce. If we were associated with a different object, of course, we would have different fields to choose from. But in this case, we have first name, last name, and title. And below that, you'll see we have some default results. Now, if you've got a directory form with the search form at the top, you can opt to have or not have the default results showing. In other words, if we chose to not have default results, we would just have a form and we wouldn't see any results here until we submitted our form. However, because we have default results, we'll see a listing of all of the possible results, and then we can filter from there using the search form. And you'll see by selecting, in this case, the last name of a record that I know exists, we're able to get that record to appear without all of the other default records to be found. The other option would be to show a directory without a search form, in which case you're only going to show the default results, and you're going to show all of the default results based on search criteria that you've set ahead of time in the admin when you created your directory. And we're going to see how we do both of these things, because they're actually both just different uses of the same functionality. Now you'll see that the results can be sorted by last name, first name, organization. We can choose which fields that we want to sort by. We can also choose which fields that our results are going to be ordered by initially. And as you can see, when there are a larger number of results, pagination is of course taken care of automatically. You don't even need to worry about that. In addition to seeing a list view, as you can see we have here, you can click on a single result and you'll be taken to a detail view, which is going to show you more details of that particular result. And the fields that you're displaying on this page are set up independently of the list view, so you can show just basic introductory data as you see here, and then show much more information about each particular result on the detail page. All right, so that's what things look like on the front end very briefly. So let's take a look at things in the administrator to see how we can manage existing directories and create our own new directories. Now, once you've logged into the administrator, you're going to end up at the control panel here, or the home page of the administrator. Just to note that the app switcher is here, and this is going to let you switch to all of your different apps and get into some global configurations and utilities, so just so you're aware that that's there. You're also going to see some quick boxes. Now in this instance we see a whole bunch of quick boxes because we have all of the different Soapbox Engage apps installed and active on this particular instance. You probably won't have all of them, so you may not see all of these quick boxes here. You're only going to see the quick boxes that are relevant to the apps that you have installed and that you're using. Today we're primarily going to be focused on this quick box because this is the directories quick box, but we'll get back to that in just a moment. Before we dig into that, there's a configuration I want to show you here that's going to be very important for your directories usage, and that is your Salesforce integration. Because the Directories app works directly with Salesforce objects, you of course need to have your Salesforce integration working properly. And to do that, you're going to go into Salesforce settings in this panel right here. Just click it to open it up. You're going to choose My Salesforce account, and you're going to put in the credentials for one of your Salesforce users so that Soapbox can log into Salesforce and query data from the object that you've got your directory set up to query. All right, once you've got that set up, then your Soapbox Engage site is talking to Salesforce, so we can proceed with looking at directories. So coming down to the directories quick box here, you'll see a few things. We've got the View All tab. That's going to take us into the directories list view, which is going to show us all of our active directories. We can add a new directories page just from clicking that button right here in the quick box. We see a list of up to 5 different directories. If you have more than 5 directories, you'll have to click the View All button to see all of them, but this is going to show you the 5 that you're most likely to want to edit. Now for each one of these, you can click the Edit button, which is going to take you into the Edit view for that particular directory. You can click the View button, which is going to show you a front-end view, basically what we were just looking at earlier, but that's going to be a nice quick direct link to that. You can also customize the URL from right here. You'll also be able to do this from within the create or edit modes, and we'll see that shortly, but just so you know, you can do it quickly here. What I'm talking about here is the URL is going to be this little slug that comes after the base URL of your Soapbox Engage site. So in this case, my first directory is the slug that we've got here. So to create that or to alter that, we would just click the customize URL link. And you'll see here we've got the page link that we're seeing. Here we've got the page link that we're seeing. We also have the page title. Now there are also a couple other options here. You can enable the search form from this panel, yes or no. And if you recall, in one of our directories we were showing the search form, and in the other one we had it disabled. And you can enable show or hide of that form. And what that means is there'll be a button here that folks can hide or show the form if it's getting in their way. And you can also enable default results. Now if you remember, we were showing the default results for this directory. So if I set this to no, we can reload our directory and we'll see just the form without the default results. And now if we do a quick search, if there are any results that match the Armstrong last name, you'll see that they'll come up. And that's what it looks like without showing the results by default. They'll just see the form, and they can search with the form, and they'll only see the results of their search. All right, so that's the quick box. So we're going to go into the View All tab right now, and that's going to take us to the list view of all of our directories. And you'll see we were only seeing 5 in the QuickBox. We only have 5 directories in this instance, so we were seeing all of them there. But again, if you have more directories, you're only going to see 5 in that QuickBox. So now we're in the list view here, and here the first thing you see are this list of all of our directory forms. You'll see their names, which Salesforce object they're associated with, whether they're published or not, whether they're public or registered. Registered meaning they would require a front-end login to be able to see and access, who the author was, and when it was created. If you have a large number of directories, you can use this filter to narrow things down a little bit. You can also publish, unpublish, copy, or delete items simply by clicking their checkboxes and then clicking those buttons: publish, unpublish, copy, delete. You can edit any of your existing forms by either clicking the checkbox and then clicking the edit button, or you can simply click the title of the directory that you want to edit, and you'll be taken right into the edit view. Now you'll see there are a series of tabs across here, and each tab has a list of fields or details, and we'll be getting into these in greater detail when we're creating our own directory in a few minutes. So we're not going to get into this too extensively right now, other than to say that once you're in the edit view, you'll use these tabs to navigate to the different sections of the directory that you can edit. So let's look at creating our own directory, our first directory, and we're going to do that by clicking the New button. And that's going to show us our new item dialog here. And the first thing we want to do here is to give our directory a title, and let's call this our demo directory, and decide which Salesforce object we want to connect it to. So we're going to click the Select Object button, and just to keep things consistent, I'm going to choose the Members object, which is an object that I have set up specifically for demonstrating forms and directories. So we're going to keep searching here, and you see they're all alphabetical. So you keep scrolling down until you hit the Members object. I'm going to select that, and then we're going to click Apply. And once we've done that, this directory is then now formally and officially associated with the Members object. We can also add a description here if we want. We do want it published, and we're going to go ahead and customize our URL here. This is the same as what we were seeing in the QuickBox, but here we're doing it on our new form here in the Edit view and the Create view. So our page link will be Demo Directory, and the page title will be Demo Directory. And enable search form, yes, we want to do that. And yes, we want to enable show hide. And we do, for now, we'll show default results. That's a decision. You can change your mind later. But a lot of times when you're building your directory, it's good to show the default results to make sure that things are appearing the way you want them to. And then later you can turn off the default results and have confidence that it will look the way you want it to when your users get their list of results. All right, so we're going to go ahead and save that. So now we can go ahead and click the View button. We're not going to really see much there because we haven't added any form fields, we haven't added a list view, we haven't really told it what we want to find or how we want it to display what is found. But you can see we do have our directory, and we've definitely got things rolling here. Okay, so those are the basic details to get things started. The next thing we're going to do, and you'll notice I'm basically working through the tabs from left to right. And on each tab, I'm working from top to bottom. That's a good way to sort of organize your thought process as you're going through this. So the next tab is going to be the search form. Now this is where I'm going to build the form. I'm going to create the fields that they're going to use to search the Salesforce object. So we want to add a Salesforce element. Now this can be as simple or as complicated as you want to make it. We're going to go ahead and just make this, just to keep it simple, we're just going to go by last name. So we're just going to add one form field right now. And you'll notice when I click on this, I see all of the different fields that are on this members object. So it's pulling these field names from Salesforce, and those are the options that I have. It knows what kind of field it is in Salesforce. It knows it's a string field, and it's going to display the field in Soapbox to match the field type that you see in Salesforce. So if it's a pick list or a multi-select pick list, it's going to show it as that type of field. All right, so we do want it published, and we do not want it hidden. And we're not going to give it a default value right now. We'll explore what that means in a few minutes. We'll leave the label set to last name. And yes, we want to display the label. We'll talk about keywords in a few minutes, and access level, we'll leave that set to public. So we can save that and click apply. And then go ahead and look to see what that's done to our directory on the front page. All right, so now we have the last name field, and do a search for a last name that we know exists, but because we haven't set up any of the list view criteria, we're not going to see any results yet. So let's go ahead and set up a list display so that we can start to see results, and then we'll come back and play with our form elements a little bit more and see some of the different things we can do with that. So let's go ahead to the list display, and you see here, we can add, we have a few different options of what we can add. We can add a Salesforce element. And again, this is going to be what's displayed as the list view result. So again, this can be as simple or as complicated as you want. Because we're searching for last name, let's go ahead and display the last name. And we can go ahead and click save. All right, and we can apply that. And now when we search for Armstrong, we should see one result coming up, and it's displaying the last name as Armstrong. All right, but we want to show more than their last name. Let's say we also want to show their first name. And so we'll start our search over Armstrong, and now we're seeing their last name and first name. Great. Let's also go ahead and create a record display. Now the list view, again, is what they're going to see if there are multiple results. So you're going to see them in list view, but if you want them to be able to click through to see a detail view or a record view, we're going to go ahead and create that now. And again, we're going to add a Salesforce element. And we can say we want last name, and we want first name, and let's say, because it's the detail view, we need some more detail. We'll say email address, and maybe there's their organization. All right, so I've run the search again, and you'll see here we have a read more link, and that's going to take us to the detail view, which is showing the last name, first name, email, and organization. And again, you can add as many of the fields on that object as you want to. So let's take a step back here. Now, so we've got a working directory, and that's great. We've got our search form, we've got our list view, we've got our record display. But let's look at some of the options that we can work with to make things a little bit more sophisticated, a little more interesting. We can create a default value here. And so we can add Armstrong as our default value. And so when we look at our form on the front end, we'll see that by default Armstrong is entered and that result is appearing. You may be wondering, if I've got a search form, why do I want to have a default there? I don't want to tell people what they want to search for. Well, and in this case, that may not make sense. But when you combine that with the ability to hide a field, which we can do by just clicking hidden, now all of a sudden, this field isn't visible anymore. But the search is still going to search based on that field. So we're deciding ahead of time what results from our object we want to display. So an example of how this might be valuable, say you're a membership organization and you have a bunch of members and you want to show a list of all of your members that are group leaders, and maybe you have a checkbox on your membership object, and if it's a group leader, that checkbox is checked. So you could have a hidden field checking for that checkbox, and if it's checked off, then you would display them. So, and that way you could show just one select subgroup of results from the members object. In that case, just the group leaders. And in addition, if we go back to our, so if we make this visible again, and we're going to add a couple more search fields. Let's say first name, and let's say organization. So now we have 3 fields and they're all visible. We have a little bit of control over how these form fields appear. So right now they are just completely all the way across the page, but we can make things a little more complex, and we do that with our CSS keywords field here. And this is going to allow us to put the form field in columns. And you do this with just a few keywords. For example, left half is going to force this field into the left column. And we're going to put this one in the right half. And it's important that the syntax is correct and you have a lower r and a capital H here. And that's going to move that field into the right half, and we'll leave the third field as it is, and that should appear across the bottom 2. So if we go ahead and reload this, we see our last name in the left half, first name on the right half, and then our organization field across the bottom. So that's 2 columns. You can also do it in 3 columns. And we're going to do that by, instead of left half, we're going to say left third. Middle third. And you win a free donut if you, actually I don't have any donuts. If you can guess what the CSS keyword here is, if we have left third, middle third, you got it right. It is the right third. You're so smart. I'm glad you're here. Okay. So now we've got these lined up in left third, middle third, right third. And instead of being 2 columns with 1 on the bottom, we'll now see them line up in 3 columns. Now in the list display, in addition to adding Salesforce elements as we've done here, we can also add attachment lists and file lists, depending on which way your Salesforce instance is configured. If you're using notes and attachments, or if you're using files, this is going to show notes and attachments, and this is going to show files. You can also add text elements. We'll call this text element 1. There we go. And that's going to show up in line with what we have here. So if we go ahead and refresh our directory, you'll see in the results, we have our text element showing up there. You can also add an image. The way this would work is you'd have a dedicated image field on the record in the Salesforce object, and that would be a URL that would link to the image that you had. So you would choose the image URL here, and then set your parameters, image height, image width, etc. And then you would save that, and then an image could appear. So if it's a member, since we're dealing with a member object here, maybe each of our members has a headshot, and so we can display their headshot with their listing. We can also add a related list. And a related list, we're not going to get into the details too deeply here, but a related list is a Soapbox directory within a Soapbox directory. So maybe your organization is a chapter-based organization, and so you have chapters all around the country. And your directory would be bringing up each of the different chapters. And you have a second object that is a child of the chapters object, and maybe that's the members object. And it's important that the related list be a child of the parent list. And so you could set it up with a related list such that for each chapter, you would display all of the members of the chapter as a related list. And so that's what this is going to do here. You're going to be able to add your related list. And in order to get this to work, you'd have to have a second directory set up on that child object that you would be then using as the directory that's pulling in the related list. And here you can see you would choose the form, the related field that the two pivot on. So in the case of this chapter and member relationship, it might pivot on the organization, or the chapter name would be a good option there, because the chapter name would exist in both the parent and the child, and so you'd pivot on that. You also have the same options in the record display. So perhaps in the list display, you don't want to show every single member's headshot, but once somebody clicks through to the record display, you do want to show their headshot. So that would be a great opportunity to use that option here. You can also add a related list to a record display. So maybe it's not until they pull up the detail view of a chapter that they see the list of all of the members. All right, so now we're going to look at the last tab here, and this is the Options tab, and this is going to give us some more setup options. And the first thing we can do is create a intro text for our directory. So we're going to go ahead and create some intro text, and we can also create some page outro text. Great, and then once we apply that, we'll see that on our directory form. You see our intro text, and you see our outro text here, and those are both going to show up above the results. It's important to note. Similarly, you have intro and outro boxes for your list page view and your record view page. So you can add intros and outros to each of those as well. Your Salesforce connection error message. If there is a problem with Salesforce, sometimes it can be helpful to your users to provide a more gentle error message. So if you've reached the API limit of your Salesforce account, you can decide what error to display to your users so it doesn't show them a big scary Salesforce message. Thanks, please try again later. And no Salesforce connection available. If for some reason your Salesforce node is down or your credentials are failing, again, instead of showing them a big scary Salesforce message, we can show a simpler, more pleasant message here. Now the parameters on the search form. This is going to help control the behavior of the search form. Radius field and radius distance default, radius distance units. These allow you to use a radius search by zip code. The setup for that's a little more involved than we're going to get into today, but just know you can, again, say you're a chapter organization, somebody's new in town, they know the zip code where they are, they could search for one of your chapters within 15 miles of their zip code. So that's a really super handy tool. But again, the setup there is a little more involved than what we're going to get into today. You can customize the search button text. You can show or hide the search button. There are other parameters here. We're not going to go through each one of these, but just so you understand where to go to find them. Likewise, the list display panel here is going to give you options for controlling the behavior of your list display. Now you can have it set to a blog format as we have it now. You could also set it to a table format. And if you switch between the two, there's an added step that you need to go through because the position here is indicating the blog position. And because we've switched to the table display, there aren't blog positions, so now we need to switch to a table position. So all you really need to do there is open it, and you'll note that it automatically switches to the blog position. So you'll just have to open each one of your fields and save them. This is a little trickier because it's a text field. And now it's put them all in the columns position. And so when we look at our results, and now we'll just see last name, first name in a table. All right, so that's setting it in a table format. Now, as I said, you can choose which field you want to order by. The default order, you can say, oh, let's order by last name. And to move up and down this selector here, you're just going to mouse down to the bottom of it. It's going to start moving on its own. So we're going to, by default, we'll sort by last name. But we'll also say, oh, if our visitors want to, they can sort by first name and email as well. And there are also just a few options by which you can group your data, and you can see those in this drop box here. You can decide whether or not to show the intro and outro that we set up above. And again, a whole bunch of options here that I encourage you to go through to take a look at each one and experiment with it a little bit, see what's going to work for you and your directory. The record display, likewise, has some parameters that you can set to control the behavior. And again, I would encourage you to look through these. You'll notice there's an edit form and edit access. If you have our Forms app also installed, you can create a situation in which a Directories app will pull up the data, and then you can have an edit button that leads to a form showing data related to the same object, where they can edit the information in that object, in that form, and submit it, and that will update the data on that record in Salesforce. That only works in conjunction with the membership portal because folks need to log in to be able to edit data. But that's what these are for here. And then finally, the metadata information is simply the search engine optimization meta tags if you so choose to use them. So now we have our final directory here. It's not super fancy. We don't have a whole lot going on here, but we can go ahead and test it out. We're searching by last name here. We can click search, and we'll see our results show up here. We can click the read more link to dive into the detail view and see the view that we've set up there. And that's basically it for our directory. And there's one more thing I want to cover before we finish up here, and that's the configuration tab. The configuration tab is going to be some global configurations that will apply globally to all of our directories. Most of these you can probably leave set to their default, but you can, if you have many directories, if you want to set up global API limit reached and no Salesforce connection available error messages, you can do that right here. And what will happen then is if you don't set them up in the individual directories, it will default to these global settings here. And these you can leave as their default settings. Links in a new window. If they click through a link, it's going to open in a new window if you set it to yes. And activate links, as you can see in the tooltip here, is going to create anchor tags for URL type fields. But that's, again, a little deeper into the weeds than I intend to get here in this particular webinar, but just so you know where those options are. So we'll go ahead and save that. And that's it. That covers our directories webinar. I hope this was helpful and informative. My name is Brad Grahowski, and on behalf of Pignet and Soapbox Engage, I thank you so much for coming by and spending some time with us. Thank you so very much, and have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day.